Welcome back, guys. In today's episode, I'm sharing 10 true, scary stories about hiking in the Appalachian Mountains. Each story will make you think twice before hiking alone again. But before we continue, if you're new here, make sure to subscribe and don't forget to like and share. Thank you all. Now, let's begin. Rex and I had been planning that hike for a while, probably close to 4 months. It was his idea originally. Rex swore this trail loop down in the southern Appalachians was one of his favorites, somewhere near the Tennessee-North Carolina line. He said it was peaceful, hardly anyone out there. We packed up the car Thursday night and left Nashville before sunrise on Friday. After about 5 hours of winding back roads, we parked just off a gravel stretch near an old fire tower that looked like it hadn't been used in decades. That first day was uneventful. Long, uphill switchbacks, nothing but trees and the occasional squirrel or crow. I spotted a couple of bear tracks in the mud near a runoff ditch, but they weren't fresh. Rex wasn't bothered, and honestly, neither was I. He'd done harder hikes, and he seemed relaxed enough. By sunset, we'd reached a flat spot near a small stream and decided to make camp there. Rex got a fire going while I wandered off just a little, maybe 30 or 40 feet, to pee behind a big fallen log. That's when I saw the first one. A stack of rocks, 7 in total, neatly arranged, about 2 feet tall. The stones were smooth, not mossy or dirty, and the ground around them looked untouched, like someone had just put them there. No disturbed leaves, no animal tracks. It felt too clean. I figured maybe Rex had done it earlier and forgot to mention it. He liked that kind of wilderness ritual stuff sometimes, so I just let it go. We ate freeze-dried chili and passed around a small bottle of whiskey until the fire died down. Nothing strange that night. We slept fine. The next morning, around mid-morning, we were cutting through a narrow pass between 2 ridges when we found another one. This stack was taller, chest high. The rocks were more varied in size, and somehow it was perfectly balanced. Not something the wind could have pulled off. Definitely not natural. I stopped and stared for a second, then turned to Rex. "You didn't build the one by our camp, did you?" He looked confused. "What one?" That's when it clicked for both of us that something was weird. But we kept walking. There wasn't really anything else to do. That night, we picked a clearing near the remains of what looked like an old homestead. Just a stone chimney standing by itself, cracked and moss-covered, with a few blackened bricks scattered in the leaves. Rex guessed the cabin had burned down decades ago. I didn't love the vibe, but we were losing daylight. I barely slept that night. Somewhere around 2 in the morning, I woke up to this sound quiet at first. Twigs snapping, then leaves crunching. Not fast, not erratic. Just slow, steady steps. Close enough that I could feel the like multiple people talking at once from under the earth. I froze, every muscle locked up. I counted my breaths, forcing them to stay even. Then came the tapping. Not sharp like fingers, not hard like wood. It was soft, wet, like the padded part of a palm gently pressing against the stone I was leaning on. That's when I broke. I stood up and ran. No light, no direction, just bolted into the dark. Branches slapped my face. I slipped once, slammed hard into the ground, but kept going. Didn't care. Just kept pushing until the trees finally broke around me. And there it was, a house. A full 2-story farmhouse, dead center in a wide clearing. White paint peeling off in sheets, windows busted out. No driveway, no visible path leading to it. Just this decaying house in the middle of nothing. The front door was hanging open. Against every single instinct, I stepped inside. The floor was warped and soft underfoot. The air smelled like mold and something else, sweet and sharp, like rotting fruit mixed with iron. The living room was packed with candles. Every surface, tables, shelves, even the floor covered with half-burned stubs, hundreds of them. All melted down, all used. In the center of the room was a symbol carved into the floor, deep, jagged lines overlapping in a circular pattern. Inside the carving, the wood was dark, almost black, looked stained. Then I heard it, footsteps. Above me, not fast, not frantic, just one slow, deliberate step after another. Like someone walking with purpose. I didn't wait. Backed out through the doorway, fell off the porch, and took off again. Ran until I saw light bleeding through the trees. By the time the sun came up, I'd reached a ranger station. Told them I'd gotten lost, maybe dehydrated, maybe hit my head. They didn't press me for details. Back home, I checked every satellite image I could find. No clearing or any building. I was 32 when it happened. My usual trail out near Galloway Ridge was shut down. The sign said something about bridge repairs, which I guess had been coming for a while. I'd been using that path for years. This one cut deeper into the southern stretch of Penmore Forest. I've hiked enough to know how to handle myself, and I wasn't planning on going far. Just needed some space and a few quiet hours outside. I packed light water, a folding knife I'd had since college, a flashlight I almost didn't bring but threw in last minute. Call it a hunch or just a habit. There was a little tightness in my chest I couldn't shake that morning, but I chalked it up to the usual stress. Work stuff, life stuff. I just needed the silence. About 3 miles in, I started noticing how silent it really was. Not just peaceful, silent. No bird song, no insects. Even the usual buzz of flies that hang near your ears when you sweat gone. There was wind, sure. You could hear it moving through the trees, bending the tops and brushing leaves. But that was it, like the forest had gone into some kind of suspended state. At first, I didn't think much of it. It happens sometimes. Animals quiet down when there's a predator nearby, maybe a bobcat, maybe a hawk overhead. But the longer it lasted, the more it felt off. Not like something was coming, more like everything was waiting. I kept walking. The trail sloped upward for a bit, and I stopped at this narrow overlook to drink some water. That's when I saw them footprints. Clear ones, right off the trail, heading down a slope to the right. They weren't old, still firm in the dirt. You could see where leaves had been crushed underfoot. But what threw me was that they were bare, human-sized. No tread, no shoe pattern, just bare feet, deep enough to tell the person hadn't been light on them either. I looked around, called out just once. Nothing too loud, just hey, you good out there? Nothing answered. I probably stood there for another full minute, just listening, waiting for something to move. A branch, a breath, anything. But it stayed quiet. And then, like an idiot, I stepped off the trail and followed them. I can't tell you why. I wasn't trying to be a hero. I wasn't even thinking in terms of danger, just curiosity. The kind that makes you lean over a cliff a little too far because you need to see what's at the bottom. I followed those prints for maybe 15 minutes. They twisted through saplings, over roots, between thick underbrush. No path, just direction. Eventually, I came to a ridge that overlooked a hollow. It wasn't a big drop, maybe 6 feet down, but the space below looked different, wrong, even from up there. The trees bent inward, their trunks curving in slow arch like they were trying to lean over something in the center. The light was dimmer there, though the canopy overhead was the same. Like the sunlight just gave up trying to reach that spot. In the middle was this wooden structure, not a cabin or lean-to. It had no walls, just 4 angled posts lashed together at the top of some kind of old cord or vine. It looked like a crude frame, 6 feet tall maybe, crooked. And at its base bones, dozens of them, and in fact were scovered bys as deaths of the most, small, white, arranged into spirals around the frame. Each one was clean. No meat, no hair, just bare bone, laid out with precision. Some spirals were tight, barely larger than a dinner plate. Others stretched out like tendrils reaching away from the center. I stood at the top of the ridge, trying to make sense of it. My brain kept searching for a reason. Maybe it was some hunter's weird marker, or an old ritual spot someone had used and abandoned. The longer I looked, the less sense it made. Then I stepped down into the hollow. Just one step, and I heard it, a voice, close, right beside my left ear. A man's voice, low and calm. One word: stop. I spun around so fast I nearly lost my balance. No one was there. No movement, no footsteps running away. Just trees. Still, silent trees. I can't explain how close it sounded. It didn't echo, didn't come from a direction. It was beside me, like someone had leaned in, lips inches from my ear. I started backing up immediately. Slow, careful steps up the slope. I didn't turn my back until I was halfway up. When I reached the top, I turned and ran. Not all out, not screaming. Just fast enough to feel every step slam into the trail, fast enough that I wasn't thinking anymore. And then I noticed the trail had changed. The incline was steeper. The trees looked older, and there were markings, fresh cuts in the bark. X-shaped, deep enough to expose pale wood. They hadn't been there earlier. I'd remember. Some of them were high, out of reach, unless you were tall or using something to mark them. The worst part was the light. The sun had dropped. Dropped. Not gradual, like time had passed. 1 second it was afternoon, the next it was near dusk. That golden hour glow had turned to long shadows and fading color. I checked my watch and it said 4:30. That didn't make sense. I hadn't been gone that long. Then I pulled out my phone. It was dead. Fully, completely dead. And it had been at 95% that morning. I checked the power button. Nothing. Just a black screen. Then came the footsteps. Off to the left at first, then the right. Never close. Never running. Just steady, paced steps that mirrored mine from just beyond the tree line. I tried to call out again. Yelled this time, but my voice barely echoed. Like the air was thick. Like shouting into heavy fabric. It came out flat, like the forest absorbed it. I kept moving. Every few steps, I'd stop and listen. The footsteps stopped with me. At some point, I came to a fork. I know there hadn't been one before. I would have remembered. But there it was. A left and a right, no signs, no markers. I didn't even think. I just went left. A couple 100 yards in, the trees started to open. I saw metal ahead. A fence. Rusted, twisted, partially collapsed. It looked like it had once surrounded a pasture. Beyond it was a narrow farm road, gravel, broken in places but clear. The second I crossed the fence line, everything shifted. Sound came back, instantly. Birds, wind, my own breathing, ragged and real again. The pressure in the air lifted. My ears popped. My phone buzzed in my pocket and lit up with 52% battery. I didn't stop walking, just kept following that gravel road. After maybe half an hour, it hit pavement, and I saw headlights coming down. At least someone should know where I'm supposed to be. I packed light, just the essentials. Tent, food, water filter, basic first aid, and a paperback I never actually opened. My tent was a cheap pop-up I'd bought online in a rush, but I figured it'd hold up fine for a couple of nights. The first day went exactly how I wanted. Quiet trail, cool air, that crunch of dry leaves underfoot that makes you feel like you're the only person alive for miles. And honestly, I kind of was. By the second day, I hadn't seen another soul in probably 12 hours. That was part of the appeal, though. Just the sounds of the woods branches creaking overhead, the occasional rustle of something in the brush, maybe a squirrel or deer. It was mid-September, just past peak hiking season, so the trails were practically empty. The solitude was nice. At least, it was at first. Around mid-afternoon on day 2, I hit this clearing, not huge, maybe 20 feet across, with some sun filtering through the trees. I decided it was a good time for a break. Took off my pack, sat on a mossy log, ate a granola bar, drank some water. Just breathing and listening to the forest. That's when I noticed him. Off to the side, maybe 30 or 40 feet away, there was a guy standing near a tree. He was still, just standing there, At first, I thought maybe he was taking a break too. Maybe he'd been sitting and stood up when I arrived, but there was no gear, no pack, no water bottle. Just him, leaning slightly against the tree, arms at his sides, looking straight at me. I did what you normally do on a trail, gave a little wave. Just a quick, friendly gesture like, "Hey, I see you all good." He didn't wave back, didn't move, just stared. I got this weird feeling in my chest. Not panic exactly, more like my body realizing something before my brain could explain it. I stood up, slung my pack on, and got back on the trail without making a big deal of it. A few minutes later, just out of curiosity, I glanced back over my shoulder. He was behind me. Not right on my heels, but close enough that it wasn't just coincidence. Same pace, same path. I told myself maybe we were just headed the same way. Still, I picked up my speed a bit. I hit a fork in the trail maybe 10 minutes after that. I stopped, acted like I was checking something in my bag, gave it a minute, then chose the right-hand path and started walking fast, like full stride, trying not to jog fast. After about half a mile, I spotted a big rock formation and ducked behind it. Just wanted to see if he'd follow. I crouched there for what felt like forever, barely breathing. Then I heard footsteps, slow, measured. He passed right by me on the trail, and that's when I heard it. He was whispering, just this low, murmuring voice. I couldn't make out any of it, not even enough to guess if it was English. He wasn't talking to me, just muttering to himself, or maybe to something I couldn't see. He didn't look around, didn't hesitate, just kept walking. Once I was sure he was out of earshot, I slipped down through a dry creek bed and rejoined the trail farther ahead. I didn't stop again. I just kept walking, fast. I passed a stream and refilled my bottle without even sitting down. The shadows were starting to stretch by then, and I knew I needed to set up camp before it got dark. I found a spot where the trail curved tightly around a ridge, creating a kind of natural blind spot. I figured if someone came from either direction, I'd have some warning. It wasn't ideal, but it would have to do. I pitched my tent in record time, didn't bother cooking, just ate another granola bar and drank more water. My stomach was too tight for anything else. I left the rain fly off so I could see out just in case. I tried to read, tried to calm myself down, but my brain was on high alert the whole time. I laid there, eyes open, listening to every sound the forest made. Around 1 in the morning, I heard footsteps. Slow, careful, not crashing through the brush like a deer. More like someone placing each foot intentionally, avoiding twigs. And they were close. Then a voice, just loud enough to hear, right outside the tent. "Allie?" I stopped breathing. That's not my name. The voice wasn't angry or loud. It was casual, like someone looking for a friend. But there was no one else out here. No one who should have known I was there, and definitely no one who should have called me by the wrong name. The footsteps circled the tent, once, slow and steady. I didn't move a muscle, just lay there, heart pounding so hard I thought it might give me away. Then silence. I waited and waited. Eventually, the sky started to lighten. First blue, then gray. I packed everything in under 10 minutes. Tent, food, gear, shoved it all into my pack without caring how it fit. Then I left the trail completely. I cut down the slope, slipping a few times, grabbing roots and rocks to keep from falling. After what felt like an hour, I hit a gravel road, probably one of those old maintenance routes or logging paths. I followed it with no idea where it led, just glad to be off the trail. After a few miles, I saw a small cabin. Weathered siding, peeling paint. There was a Jeep parked out front, tires caked with mud. I didn't care what it looked like. I just walked up slowly, hands visible, trying not to look like a threat. An older guy stepped out onto the porch with a rifle slung across his back. He didn't look surprised to see me, didn't even seem that curious. He just scanned me up and down like he'd seen this kind of thing before. He said, "Someone following you?" I nodded. He didn't ask anything else, just motioned for me to sit, then handed me a glass of sweet tea. He used an old rotary phone to call the sheriff and gave them directions like it was something he'd done before. While we waited, he sat next to me and started talking. Said he'd lived out there for decades. Seen hikers come out of those woods looking all kinds of shook up," said one woman. "A local went missing up there a few years back. They found her barefoot, clothes ripped to shreds, wooden top." I stayed put, and we went from seeing each other every weekend to maybe once a year if we were lucky. Still, when we did meet up, it was like nothing changed. That kind of friendship. So I finally said yes, packed a bag, drove the 6 hours, and found his place tucked back into the trees like it had always been there. It wasn't fancy, just a wood cabin, generator-powered, with a little porch that creaked when you stepped on it, but it felt solid. Quiet in a way you forget places can be. First night was easy. We grilled some burgers, drank too many of those cheap IPAs Jesse loved, sat on the porch watching trees move in the wind. No cell service, no notifications, just the hum of crickets and our stupid jokes echoing into the woods. The next morning, Jesse made coffee with this old percolator that hissed like it was angry to be awake, and over breakfast he mentioned this trail he found. Said it wasn't marked on any maps, just something he stumbled on during one of his solo hikes. He called it the Split. I asked why, and he told me it was named after the fork in the trail. One path led into a ravine, the other along a ridge. The usual folklore, like this is the path you take if you want to be smart, versus this is the one if you're curious and kind of dumb. Naturally, we chose the dumb one. But before we got there, we packed some basics. Water bottles, a couple granola bars, a small first aid kit Jesse insisted on bringing even though he rolled his eyes at it. We left around 10. Sun was up, sky clear, just chilly enough to keep sweat from turning gross. Perfect hiking weather, honestly. The trail started off like any other. Dirt and roots, some narrow parts where you had to watch your footing, a few steep inclines that made me regret not doing more cardio. Jesse led the way, ducking under branches, stopping now and then to point out a weird mushroom or a tree scar he thought looked like a wolf's face. It was familiar and kinda comforting. Just two guys who'd done this 100 times before, catching up in a place that didn't care about deadlines or rent. About 2 hours in, we reached the spot. It wasn't dramatic. No big sign or eerie vibe. Just a worn trail that suddenly gave you two options, left down into a ravine, thick with pine trees, or right up a ridge where boulders piled like broken teeth. Jesse paused and pointed. Most people, if they even get this far, they take the ridge. It's easier to see where you're going, easier to get back. He looked at me, and I knew what was coming. But the ravine's more interesting. I didn't even hesitate. Lead the way. Right from the start, it felt different. The air wasn't colder exactly, but heavier. Like the trees were leaning in just a little too close. The slope was sharper than it looked, and within the first 10 minutes, I slipped and landed hard on my side. Took the hit on my elbow. It didn't break anything, but it knocked the breath out of me. I laughed it off, tried to play it cool. Jesse didn't laugh. He just stared down the slope like he was expecting something. That was the first time I noticed him get quiet. Usually he was nonstop out there. Facts about moss, jokes about squirrels with a vendetta, weird stories about things he'd seen in the woods. But after we hit the bottom of the ravine, he stopped talking. Not even short answers, just nods or nothing at all. I told myself he was tired, maybe hungover from the night before. Then we reached this dry creek bed. It looked like it had once carried a decent flow of water-smooth stones, pale dirt, a slight dip running through it. We stepped into it to take a break, and that's when I realized something was off. It was completely silent. Not like a quiet morning, not like the stillness before a storm. I mean nothing. No birds, no rustling, no wind. Even our breathing felt too loud. I stomped my boot on the dirt and didn't even get the usual crunch. It was like the sound was being swallowed. And then Jesse said, almost under his breath, "Don't move." The tone hit me like a slap. I froze instantly, heart spiking. He was staring past me, maybe 40, 50 feet into the trees ahead. I turned slowly, trying not to make a sound, and followed his gaze. At first, I didn't see anything. Then something clicked. There was a shape, standing partially behind a tree, not moving, not crouching or hiding, just there, watching, or maybe not watching. I don't know. It was tall, taller than any person should be, thin in a way that didn't match a human frame. Its limbs were too long, and they didn't hang right. They angled sharply, like a coat hanger bent the wrong way. And it wasn't in shadow. It was just out of place, like it wasn't meant to be there, and the world around it hadn't figured out how to react. I opened my mouth to ask what the hell I was looking at, but Jesse gave me this look, dead serious, eyes wide, and gestured for me to back up. So I did. We didn't run, we didn't talk. We just moved backward, one slow step at a time, keeping our eyes fixed on the spot where it stood. It never moved. But I couldn't stop thinking about the way it had angled its body like. If it decided to move, it wouldn't walk, it would just shift. By the time we got back to the fork, my shirt was soaked with sweat. My knees were shaking. Jesse didn't say a word the whole Drove straight from Crestwick down to Ashfern, a little mountain town that didn't even have a stoplight. I was meeting up with Milo, a guy I hadn't seen much since high school. We used to be close, hung out at the same skate park, crashed the same backyard parties, but we lost touch for a while. Randomly ran into each other at a climbing gym in Roanoke the year before, and we just sort of clicked again. He was different though. Talked fast, moved faster. Like he always had somewhere else to be. A little wired, a little cocky. But he'd been working on trail crews for a couple summers, and I figured if I was gonna do my first proper backcountry hike, I'd want someone who actually knew what they were doing. We planned a 3-day loop through a ridge trail that barely showed up on any maps. Milo said it was part of an old fire break that had connected to the Appalachian at some point, but people stopped using it because it was too rocky and overgrown. It's not even on all trails, he told me, like that was a selling point. Honestly, it kinda was. I wanted quiet. Real quiet. Not the kind you get on popular trails where you're always hearing someone's Bluetooth speaker a mile away. He also mentioned some shortcut that would let us cut across the valley and loop back to the access road without having to double back. I didn't ask too many questions. He sounded confident, and I trusted him. The first day was incredible. A little cold, but nothing we weren't prepared for. The trail was narrow, winding right along the ridge, with patches where you could see straight down into the valley on one side. We made good time, hiked maybe 10 miles before setting up camp in this little pocket of flat ground surrounded by scrubby pine. No one else around, not even distant campfire smoke. Just trees and rock and sky. We ate cold rations, talked about college, girls, people we used to know. Milo started going off about the history of the area, how the Forest Service used to have watchtowers along this stretch decades ago. He said most of them got torn down, but a few were just abandoned, left to rot out in the woods. He said he'd seen one before, no stairs left, just a rusted-out skeleton hidden in the trees. I asked if he remembered where it was. He shrugged. Somewhere off-trail. I wasn't looking for it, just kind of stumbled on it. The way he said it made me think he was hoping we'd find one again. That night, I was out cold the moment I zipped up my sleeping bag. No sound but the wind cutting through the trees. Sometime later, had to be well past midnight. I woke up to the sound of the tent zipper opening. Thought Milo was just heading out to piss. I didn't think much of it at first, but after 5, maybe 10 minutes, he still hadn't come back. I called out. Nothing. I sat up, listened. Total silence. Not even the breeze anymore. Grabbed my headlamp and unzipped the tent. His boot prints were easy to spot in the frost, and I followed them a short way into the trees. Maybe 20, 30 feet away, he was just standing there, not moving. Back turned to me, looking straight into the woods. I asked, "You good?" He turned around like I'd just shaken him out of a dream. His eyes looked weird, not scared exactly, just distant. "You didn't hear that?" he asked. "Hear what?" He glanced behind him again. It stopped. We didn't talk much after that. Just went back into the tent and lay there, awake, but not really saying anything. The next morning, over a half-hearted breakfast, Milo said he wanted to cut downhill and look for the old tower he'd mentioned. I wasn't into the idea. We had a plan. We had a route, but he brushed it off like it'd only take a couple of hours, tops. So we packed up and headed into the brush. The descent was rough. No trail, no markers, just thick undergrowth and endless trees. We kept having to stop and check our bearings, which felt like a joke since we didn't really know where we were going. It felt wrong almost immediately. Like the woods were crowding in tighter the further down we went. After a couple of hours, I told him we should head back. He didn't respond, just kept pushing ahead like he was following something I couldn't see. I started getting frustrated. It was cold. I was sweating through my base layers, and the novelty of the off-trail adventure had completely worn off. And then we found it. It wasn't a fire tower. It was more like a tree stand, but massive and not remotely safe looking. Someone had rigged this platform between two massive trees using warped lumber and rusted bolts. The boards were old and wet and splintering. The ladder, or what passed for one, was just uneven planks nailed into the trunk, some barely hanging on. Milo dropped his pack and started climbing without a word. I told him to stop, said it looked like it was going to collapse. He just kept going. When he reached the top, I called up, asked what he saw. He didn't answer at first. Then finally he said, "There's a tarp. Looks like someone's been sleeping here." I told him to get the hell down. No reaction. Then he said, "Wait, there's..." And then he dropped. Not stumbled, not slipped, dropped. Like something had let go of him. He hit the ground hard. A sound I can't forget, sickening and final. I thought he was dead. Ran to him, already expecting the worst. But he was awake, in shock probably. His arm was bent in a way it definitely shouldn't have been. One leg too. But the look on his face that stayed with me more than anything, he looked hunted. I helped him up, got his arm over my shoulder.